the city of New York and its families. I met Rochelle at the Inner Circle event, and she asked me to come on her show. And I think within 2 weeks of that was when she was first diagnosed. And she sent me a note and said, I'm going to get better. And when I do, I want you on my show. And to see her come back and then succumb to this, I have to tell you, for me, it's been heartbreaking to watch that. She's embodied a level of spirit and energy that I think is really the essence of what New York City is all about. And very sad for her family. And we'll be praying for all of them, the New York One family as well. So it's hard to believe that it's already September. The summer has flown by, and I'm proud to say that we offered over 110,000 students in grades K to 8 free, full-day summer learning and enrichment through our Summer Rising program. This program keeps getting better each year. Our students took approximately 3,000 field trips this summer. Think about that. 3,000 field trips the kids took during the Summer Rising, which was about 1,000 more compared to the previous year. And that says to me that our schools are getting this message that we're getting beyond the four walls of the classroom to explore our great city. And families are taking notice because demand for Summer Rising is through the roof. And we've already started planning for next July. Nonetheless, we never lose sight of our primary mission, which is to ensure that each student graduates on a pathway to a rewarding career and long-term economic security, equipped to be a positive force for change. I'm excited to delve deeper into our plans during my State of Our Schools address, which we'll be delivering on September 20th. There, I'll provide a comprehensive overview of our vision. But in the meantime, here are some updates on key issues that are happening as we speak in the front and center for the start of the school year. The first thing is the bus strike, potential bus strike. So you've likely heard and read about the looming issues involving a potential bus strike by the union representing some of our bus drivers. To clarify, this isn't a straightforward negotiation between the city and the union. Instead, multiple bus companies are engaging with the union. The Department of Education is not at the bargaining table for this agreement. This agreement is negotiated between the bus companies and the ATU. Anything? Our leadership team has developed a contingency plan in the event of a strike that we hope will minimize its impact on our students and their families. Rest assured, we're not sitting idle. We devised an array of alternative transportation solutions, emergency metro cars for all affected families, and dedicated arrangements, including prepaid ride share and transportation reimbursement for our students with disabilities with recommended transportation. Those in foster care and temporary housing receiving yellow bus service, and others needing specialized transport services. We're currently training school staff so they can support families with accessing these transportation alternatives if necessary. In terms of where we are right now, talks are ongoing between the bus companies and the ATU. This is a very good thing. When both parties are talking, they're not striking. We're continuing to push for a quick resolution that best serves all of our young people. While ATU has indicated they will not strike on the first day of school, certain steps that must be taken by the companies and the ATU prior to the first day of school have been delayed. Every year, drivers choose their routes for the upcoming year, a selection which is based on seniority. Last week, the ATU delayed this process. This may result in some drivers being placed on unfamiliar bus routes, and some companies not being able to provide families who ride curb to school bus routes with pickup drop-off times in advance of the first day of school. In fact, some families may not have received confirmation from their bus vendor yet with information about their route. So we're working closely with the bus companies to minimize disruptions, but we want to make parents and families aware that they may in fact experience some disruptions and delays to busing on the first day of school. If a bus strike does occur, About half of our students who take a bus to school may be affected. Almost 86,000 students in total. This includes approximately 27,000 students with disabilities, 7,000 students in temporary housing, 700 students in foster care, 60,000 New York City public schools students, 14,000 charter school students, and 12,000 non-public school students. I want to repeat that as well. The number of students in the categories, out of that 86,000 number, 60,000 are New York City public school students. 14,000 are charter school students. And 12,000 are non-public school students, all of whom we serve. So we're committed to keeping all of our families informed throughout this process. The primary objective always is to ensure that every student can attend school. So I'm going to stop there on the potential strike of the bus and take questions just on the bus situation. Anybody?
Potential bus strike questions. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, so I understand that it's not a direct negotiation between the city and the union, but the city does own the largest bus company, and my understanding is that that's one of the companies that's at the table, and so I'm wondering, is there any way to kind of exert any influence on the course of those negotiations through this company that the city owns?
Kim Moore Ward is our chief negotiator and labor leader for us here, and I'm going to ask that Kim, you want to respond to that question, please?
So, sure, Chancellor. So, New York, thank you. Thank you. Nice Bus is who you are referring to, is a nonprofit bus company. A lot of members of this organization, including the Chancellor, sit on the board. We are not, we're not responsible for Nice Bus. So there will be a part of the negotiation as well as the private bus companies.
If you can just identify yourself as well, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica from WMIT Documents. Can you
Hi.
say that part again about why there might be delays even tomorrow because of the routes?
Sure. Emma, you want to speak to that? Emma Vadera?
Yes, hi, thank you very much.
Hi, thank you very much. So first of all, I want to be clear, we are very hopeful there will not be an impact on the first day of school. We're very glad that there will not be a strike tomorrow. Glad to be starting the year this way. But basically what happened is there's something called driver picks, which is the way that drivers usually get their routes. That was supposed to happen last week for bus companies. It was delayed, as the Chancellor mentioned, by the ATU. After drivers are assigned their routes through that process, they then also do dry runs to check the route out. All of that is, we are told by the vendors and the ATU, still happening now, but it's happening in an expedited manner this week in less time than it would have needed to happen otherwise. So that's where we do have flags. We're hopeful all will be smooth, but it could lead to some additional disruptions.
Yes.
Doug Williams, WCBS. I spoke to the mom of two special needs students last week who said in bus disruptions in the past, her receipts to OPT have gone unpaid. And I'm curious what the system will be to pay rideshare receipts back and whether her fear that the same thing that has happened in the past could continue to happen.
Sure. Emma?
Yes, thank you. So just to be clear, as the Chancellor mentioned, there's actually two different options we'll be offering to those particular sets of students, students with disabilities, students in temporary housing, and students in foster care. And that is prepaid rideshare. So the family's not putting out any dollars up front, and then a reimbursement process. We actually will be recommending to families that they use the prepaid rideshare. We have a vendor that we'll be making available. We're working with that vendor to scale up the families they can serve. But if they use our prepaid rideshare, use our account, they're not putting any dollars out up front. We're paying the vendor directly for those services. So that will be our recommended route. We will be offering reimbursement as well to make sure we can get everybody covered. And we're working to expedite the reimbursement process in that way as well. So we've had some very specific requests from folks. Don't want to do daily reimbursements, want to do weekly reimbursements like that we're working through to try and expedite the process. We're adding some additional staff to go through from the scale we expect.
Go back here.
Sonia from WABC. About how many families might qualify for that prepaid rideshare, which sounds like the stuff.
So about 32,000 students will qualify for the prepaid rideshare and the reimbursement. So that's what we'll make available again to those student populations the Chancellor mentioned, students with disabilities, with transportation on their IEP, students in temporary housing, and students in foster care. They will all qualify for both of those two options, and it's about 32,000 students.
Yes, over there.
Chris Welch from Fox 5. You said there's no possibility of a strike tomorrow, Thursday, but Friday there is still a possibility. Is that what we're understanding? And then the second part of that is not even really directly related, but what do you say to parents who do not think their kids will be able to use the alternative transit methods and want to have an alternative remote learning possibility? Is that a consideration?
Kim, why don't you take the first part, first person, and Emma, second part.
So, we've been in contact with the unions as well as the bus companies, and we are assured that there will be no bus strike this week, so Thursday and Friday. They're continuing negotiations, and I believe that they're meeting again on Friday afternoon.
Emma?
The second was about the remote learning.
Yeah, is that even a consideration at this point for people that can't use the alternative methods?
Thank you very much for the question. At this point, our focus is A, hoping a strike is avoided, and B, getting all of our students to school. So that's why we'll be offering a fairly expansive, we'll be doing metro cards for kids and grown-ups. We'll be offering those two additional options.
Yeah.
And that's where we're focused. And I think, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, let me just say, let Dan lean in as well. We will not kick into a remote option here, and our first deputy chancellor will tell you why.
Yeah, and just to set the context, so this will, mic issues, I'm going to try to use my outdoor voice. This will not, thankfully, involve all students, all elementary students, all students in a particular school. So you're talking about a situation where some students potentially cannot get to school or can't get to school easily in a larger classroom. In that situation, we don't offer live streaming. That's not something that we have in our collective bargaining agreements. It's not something we're set up for. If, God forbid, we're in a situation where we have to close down a school or a number of schools and all students are home, that's a different situation. Then we can pivot to remote in that situation. So this is why, as Emma says, our focus really is providing as many options as possible for parents to continue to get their students to school in person. One thing, just a quick detail on that, the rideshare option was something that didn't exist in 2013 when there was an actual bus strike the last time. It was simply reimbursement. This time we're offering a pretty robust option that didn't exist in the past.
Thanks. Alex?
Alex from Fox. Just a question about the cost of that. If you all have an estimate of what it would cost per week to do the rideshare, either reimbursement or prepaid?
We do not at this stage because we don't know how many families are going to take us up on each of those options. So what we know is the number of students who are eligible, but not how many will take us up.
Sonia?
That was actually my question, is how much more it might cost versus standard bus transportation?
Yes.
Just to follow up on potential strike and for kids and parents who ride share or driving in general, it doesn't make sense. This may seem outside the box, but is there a way to work with the MTA, or do you plan to work with the MTA about outreach to make sure that average riders are aware that there may be children with special needs or young children with their parents riding with them that they may not know about?
Emma? Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. So we are in contact with our colleagues at MTA on a series of things, including how to communicate to passengers, how to communicate to folks working at stations about the influx of new students who might be suddenly showing up if this were to happen. And so we are communicating with them about where there might be additional buses needed, for example, because we know it's where students will be traveling. So we're in contact with MTA about each of those.
If there are no more questions, we're going to move on to the next topic, which is our city's response to the asylum seekers.
So New York City has long been a beacon of hope and opportunity for countless individuals and families, and since the 22 22-23 school year, about 21,000 students in temporary housing have been enrolled in our schools across all 5 boroughs. This includes another 2,500 or so students in temporary housing who enrolled in our schools just this summer alone. The highest enrollment numbers continue to be in districts 2, 9, 10, 24, and 30. To support our newcomer students, we launched Project Open Arms in the summer of 2022. This coordinated effort represents our commitment to ensure that no child feels left out or unsupported. From helping with school enrollment to offering access to crucial mental health supports, from facilitating transportation to and from school, to ensuring that the transition for our English language learners is smooth, Project Open Arms has been instrumental. This year, we will continue to welcome our students with open arms. Over the last 5 years, it's very important to note this, because I get asked this question a lot. We saw a major decline in enrollment in our public schools. 120,000 students in 5 years. 5 years prior to this administration, the New York City public school system lost 120,000 students, which includes 70,000 in the 2 years leading up to this administration. And we're excited to fill these empty seats with new students and to bring new voices into our school communities. To support our English language learners, we have over 3,400 English as a new language licensed teachers, ENL for short, and more than 1,700 certified bilingual teachers who are fluent in Spanish. Additionally, to bridge any communication gaps, we provide translation services to assist our families and caregivers. We currently provide interpretation services in 240 different languages, and any parent can request interpretation services at their school. Last year, we made sure our schools got the resources they needed to accommodate new students on an as-needed basis. This fall, we committed $12 million, or $2,000 per student, to schools seeing an influx of 6 or more students in temporary housing. This is in addition to the $110 million in fair student funding. This was last year. This year, we completely changed our school funding formula to provide additional funding to schools based on the number of students in temporary housing that they enroll. We recognize that this specific student population faces additional challenges and that their schools need the additional resources to fully support them. Throughout the school year, we will also stay in close coordination with principals and superintendents who see our newest New Yorkers join their school communities, and we will disperse funds as necessary throughout the school year. Lastly, I want to address any concerns that our families might have around mandated vaccinations for our students. For our newest New Yorkers and students in temporary housing, we are following standard protocol, including federal guidance stating that vaccination cycles must begin within 30 days of enrolling in school. So with that, we'll start to take questions.
Awesome. Caleb?
Hi, Caleb from the Daily News. Chancellor, you've spoken about overcrowding at some schools, and this goes to your point about the districts with higher densities, taking on these unusually large shares of migrant students because of where the shelters are placed. How does the enrollment team deal with density? And I guess that also brings up the question of, should they, with other challenges arising about getting students to and from school, especially with the looming bus strike, should we be talking about placing students in further away schools that might have less overcrowded classrooms?
Yep, very good. I appreciate that. I'm going to ask Melissa to respond. Melissa Ramos will probably be the main point of contact on this. She has led Project Open Arms. She is most well-versed in all aspects of what we've been doing with our asylum-seeking students and their families, leading the team and our efforts here. Melissa.
Thank you so much for that question. And yeah, so many of the schools did reach capacity where students were zoned based on their locations at the HERCs or at some of the emergency shelters. And so we've worked really closely with our superintendents to identify schools within their districts that are just as close to those zoned schools so that we can send students to those schools as well. Additionally, some of our neighboring school districts, so in particular thinking about like our District 2 neighborhood, that was really a district that saw a great influx. We work with the superintendents in neighboring districts like District 1 and District 3, where they also have schools with available seats. And we make sure that we share those schools with our family welcome centers and our enrollment counselors so they can strategically place students in those schools as well. And in terms of the bus strike, every option that all our students are going to be offered, our asylum-seeking families will be offered as well. They are students in temporary housing, and so they will be offered the same options.
You know, one thing I want to point out in response to the question, Kayla, is that we have room across our system, and we certainly don't want to overwhelm any individual schools. And that's why Melissa and our enrollment folks have been working very closely at trying to ensure that this year we're spreading the students around a little bit more. You know, when you're a parent of a child who's 6 or 7 years old, you know, if you're living in a temporary shelter in Queens, we don't want to send you to school in Brooklyn. So we're trying to move them a little further out from where they were, but so that those individual schools are not taking on more than their fair share. So we're paying very close attention to those numbers.
Medina?
Hi, I'm Medina from Politico.
Sure.
So I've been speaking with some school leaders and advocates who feel like they haven't gotten like a blueprint or a plan from the DOE as far as how to serve the varying needs of asylum seekers. Some of them have been calling for like the creation of an office that's sort of parallel to the Office of Students in Temporary Housing that would be specifically focused on asylum seekers, refugee arrivals. So can you respond to that, and is that something you would consider doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we just actually updated our info hub, which is accessible to our staff on the DOE website. And we have a bunch of resources on there, including how to escalate to your budget director, your HR director, your superintendents, and our central Project Open Arms team for support. There's also guidance to support students on their first day of school. Additionally, we meet with superintendents and principals as soon as an escalation comes in. And so today alone, met with the superintendent, had a conversation with them about a particular school. And so we're keeping close eye on this, but always welcome the feedback. And so we will absolutely continue to check in with them and see ways that we can be even more helpful.
This is a new emerging thing for all of us as a city and certainly as a school system. I want to really just salute all of the folks who are in our schools, our principals, our teachers, our parent coordinators, who have just done a yeoman's job. They really have, in terms of trying to meet this new emerging demand. It has not been easy. We've been learning lessons each and every step of the way. We will continue to do that. And so whether or not there'll be new offices that will ultimately be developed in response to this, we'll see. But one thing I do feel very confident about, and I have visited several of these schools that have welcomed these students. It is New York City Public Schools at its finest. So yes, we recognize some of the issues and the concerns. We're doing our best to respond. But when you want to see kids themselves stepping up and talking about how they've wrapped arms around their new classmates and are serving as interpreters themselves, it's a beautiful thing to see. And to see the parent coordinators who've done clothing drives and food drives and engaging the whole village together, it is also a wonderful thing to see. I had a parent coordinator who said to me, it's not just your to do, Mr. Chancellor. We all have to do our part. And when I hear that and I recognize it's the entire city that is trying to do our part. The stress and strain is a financial one. And that is one that the City Hall and the mayor continues to try to fight. That we need more funding from our federal government. We need more support. The resources that we have to put out from the New York City Public Schools is a challenge. So I want everybody to recognize that. While we have done a great job with the limited resources that we have, we need more help. And I want to make sure that that's very clear.
I read some statistics where you said that there were, I think it was 3,400 teachers who were licensed to instruct English as a new language. And in addition to that, there are 1,700 ESL teachers in the system, primarily for Spanish. How many
Patrick, if you want to come up, please, Patrick Fagan, who oversees all this work for us. But before you even go, Patrick, I'm going to just respond also by saying we are making at our first school visit tomorrow morning, together with the mayor. We'll be making an announcement together with the U of T, specifically on this issue. So I'm not here to announce it today, but we will be announcing tomorrow morning something that we think is going to be very helpful. But in the meantime, Patrick, what are the numbers that we've got?
Thank you, Chancellor. So today, since today, we've hired 188 ESL teachers, new teachers, and we've also hired 175 new teachers. That's bilingual. Now, please keep in mind that we still have more in the hopper. We have about 140 candidates that are still available, that's ESL, and we also have about another 120 bilingual candidates that's still available.
Right, and I think that's important to note. We have candidates who are available, who are being processed as we speak, that we expect to get into our schools in the coming days. So this is an ongoing process, but something that I think we're very, very hopeful about. Together with the announcement that we'll make tomorrow, we think we're going to be in really good shape.
If I could clarify, so it's 188 new ESL teachers and 175 new teachers licensed to teach English as a new language?
No.
No, bilingual.
Bilingual teachers.
So some of the districts that I've seen, I think some of the biggest influxes of the newcomers also have a number of screened or selective middle or high schools. And so are those schools enrolling any of the newcomers? And you know, on a related note, is there anything you're looking at other than the number of open seats to ensure that schools that already have really concentrated needs aren't getting disproportionately kind of asked to bear this also?
Thank you for the question. And so we'll go to if we could start with the way that we enroll the students. So these are students in temporary housing. Under the McKinney-Vento Act, they have a right to attend their zone school. And so we can't lose sight of that. Keeping in mind that we know that those zone schools fill up, then of course we do look at schools that are just as close to their zone schools, and we look for available seats there as well. Now, there is a lot of talk about bilingual classes to support students, and transitional bilingual classes are one of 3 models. And so we have dual language, we also have ANL, which we said was English as a new language. And so all schools are required to service their multilingual learners. So if a school has a seat, they also have to have a program in place to support those students. Now, the additional piece to that is if they get 15 or more students who then become, they take the NICETEL, which is the New York State test to identify students as English language learners. If the school determines that they are an L and that school needs an additional teacher, then we make sure that the school has the money that they need to hire that additional teacher. So they may have enough ENL teachers or bilingual teachers at the start of the year, but as that number goes up, they may need additional teachers. That's where we come in with our escalation process and make sure that we get them the money and access to candidates who they can hire to serve those positions. In terms of the middle and high school placements that have screen components, there are international schools that have certain requirements, but once a student tests as an L, they qualify for some of these seats. And so there are nuances in the enrollment process, but the short answer is yes, if they qualify, then they are getting seats in some of these schools.
But so for students who are just arriving, that would presumably take a while for them to test, and right?
They have 10 days at the school to test the student.
But if they need to take that test before being placed at the school, where are they being placed in the meantime?
Well, they are assigned to a school first, and then they are administered the test.
Okay. And academically selective schools would not be enrolling newcomer students?
I'll pass this over to Deputy Chancellor.
Academically selective schools, like
Not necessarily, Michael. Just to break this up a little bit, Melissa talked about, the newcomer students are coming to us in all ages, all school ages, right? So we got elementary, we got pre-K, middle, high school. For the elementary students, we're trying to put them, and they have a right, as Melissa said, to be in their zoned elementary school. But for middle and especially for high school, like any other New York City public school student, they have the choice to apply even if they come in the beginning of the year. I haven't looked at this, we certainly can look at it, but there absolutely are going to be newcomer students in temporary housing who are going to be interested in a screened school and are going to qualify for a screened school. So that is absolutely not barred to them, but that's their choice, as it is for any of our high school age students about where they want to apply.
I think it's also really important to point out that not all of our newcomers or our asylum seekers rather are English language learners. And so that's a real important distinction in terms of the programming that we offer. For our English language learners, as Melissa had mentioned, they'll go into their neighborhood school regardless of whether or not they've taken the NICETEL. And once we have that information, we can determine whether they're placed in ENL, if the school has a transitional bilingual program, or if dual language is available. And those bilingual programs continue to expand. So we built 33 new programs last year. We're adding 44 more this year because we know that there's a demand for those programs. Right now, the bulk of our students, over 80% of them are in ENL classrooms that are English-speaking teachers who are ENL trained, and that's where the bulk of our students are, but we're building more and more of those bilingual programs.
A question in the back in Spanish.
This question is for Melissa. Melissa, if you don't take briefly, what would be the message in Spanish of the to the new people in the family?
I'm so sorry, I didn't hear.
What would be the message that you want to deliver to the parents in Spanish?
Que todos nuestros estudiantes, ya sean recién llegados o que han estado acá por mucho tiempo, les damos la bienvenida y queremos que realmente tengan una experiencia segura con todos los recursos que necesitan para salir adelante académicamente y estamos todos preparados para hacer eso por ellos.
Any other, yes?
I have one quick question. If migrant children are at a certain hotel but then move to another hotel, how would you handle that?
That's a really good question, and thank you for that. We are seeing a lot of transfers from one shelter to the next, or we know that there are also now vouchers that are being given to families, 28-day hotel vouchers, and so a family could be at one of these hotels and then eventually move to a HERC or to a shelter. So to answer your question, we have to work really quickly with our Students in Temporary Housing Division and our enrollment folks to make sure that those transfers are processed. And in some cases, the families do not want a school transfer. They really like their school and they want to stay, and so then we immediately connect with our Office of Pupil Transportation and make sure that that busing is put in place so the student can stay at their school.
Sonia.
What was the biggest challenge last year having asylum seekers arriving throughout the academic year? Was it just, and having them move between different shelters, and was it getting resources to different schools and moving those resources around? And also I wanted to know the difference between ENL and ESL, are they one and the same?
That's a really good question. ESL used to be called English as a Second Language, but as we know that many of our newcomers actually, English they're multilingual in many cases. And so English is a new language, but not necessarily a second language. It might be a third, a fourth, or a fifth. So that's the distinction. We now use ENL instead of ESL, but ESL was super popular before. So that's why you hear both.
Right, but Q, can you speak to some of the experiences that schools are seeing on the ground?
Sure, and I think Melissa spoke a little bit to that, right, in terms of making sure that students have the resources and their basic needs are met, and schools are really rallying around that. I think a lot of the work that Claudia's team had done in previous years and in these last couple of years about making sure that schools are caring communities and are really thinking about taking care of the whole community in that way. A lot of what we're seeing, though, academically ends up being in terms of teacher training, and so much of what my team has then been deployed to do is to provide those kinds of supports for teacher training. So making sure not just that our ENL teachers are prepared, but that our content teachers or teachers who wouldn't typically have ELs know how to support the ELs with the right strategies. And now that we're moving in the direction of a curriculum that is grounded in both science and aligned to the, grounded in science and aligned to the standards, that's really going to help level that playing field as well. because we'll know how to support them very specifically to address those pieces of the curriculum. In terms of other needs that ELs have, regardless of the age, and you've probably experienced this anytime you've been in any new setting, is a sense of belonging and inclusivity. And so many of our programs are designed to do that as well. We have an ambassadors program where we have alumni come in and actually provide career and college support to students regardless of their status. We have programs that are meant to be their dream squads that actually work specifically on that, on creating welcoming communities for students who are newcomers, and a range of other programs that are meant to do just that. And we've seen that we've dropped actually the dropout rate has declined significantly. So I think it's gone from something like almost 26% to just about 15.4 actually is the amount. It's gone to 15.4% in just a few years by creating these caring communities and these kinds of supports.
We're going to move on to the next topic, and if you want to double back to asylum seekers in the open question, we can do that then. But we'll be hitting safety and mental health next.
Great. So every parent and guardian who sends a child to our schools expects them to be safe, both physically and emotionally. Safety is a top priority, both for the mayor and myself. I stand fully behind Mayor Adams as he works to rid our city of violence, restore peace to our neighborhoods, and bring healing to these school communities in the wake of the pandemic. During the last year, we had nearly 7,000 weapons confiscated in our schools. So for context, during the school year, 18-19 school year, pre-pandemic, approximately 2,700 weapons or dangerous instruments were confiscated. That's an increase of nearly 160%. Many times we find that young people are not bringing weapons to school to use them in the classroom. They're carrying them for protection during their commute to and from school. And often, it is our students who come to adults and let them know that another student is carrying something dangerous. Our students want their schools to be safe. So this year, our Project Pivot initiative is expanding to 250 schools based on various factors, including safety and academic performance. This initiative is a critical component of our safety strategy. It's important to mention that the schools have the freedom to choose their community partner, which ensures a genuine connection and strong supports for students. This endeavor will be funded by a budget of approximately $15 million. It is the responsibility of everyone to keep our kids safe. So I'm calling all of our parents and community leaders to volunteer their time and be one of those trusted adults engaged in supporting our schools. We also recognize that in today's world, ensuring the safety of our students means controlling access to our schools. That's why we've designed a visitor control system to ensure that only authorized visitors gain access. By the end of this process, every school building's main entrance will be locked and equipped with a buzzer and video intercom, which our dedicated school safety agents will monitor. We have begun outfitting schools with this new door locking system, starting with our lower grade schools, pre-K to grade 5. We will have the system installed in these schools, which are about 744 schools, by this spring. We've already installed about 100. From there, we will begin to install the system in all of our upper grades, middle and high school. In case a student urgently needs refuge, know that an NYPD school safety agent will be there at the front door of each school to offer immediate support. And for our first responders, we have provided them with an access code to ensure that they can swiftly attend to emergencies. Our commitment to ensuring the whole child is safe extends to a variety of mental health initiatives as well. So additionally, we have to address the issues of emotional safety. Yoga and mindfulness are powerful tools to help our students focus and deal with the pressures of life. Data from the Yoga and Mindfulness Teacher Preparation Program clearly shows their positive impact. Our students will be introduced to mindful breathing exercises this year, with each school tailoring its approach based on its needs. Furthermore, we have nearly 5,000 dedicated social workers and school counselors available across our school system. These professionals are pivotal in establishing a supportive environment for our children. And I'm proud to say that our student to guidance counselor / social worker ratio is one of the best in the nation. We continue to expand mental health services in schools. So to give you a little bit of data, there are 331 schools that have access to off-site mental health clinics serving over 170,000 students. There are also over 333 schools that have access to on-site mental health services via school-based health clinics, which are serving almost 150,000 students. We're partnering with the New York State Office of Mental Health to establish 100 additional school-based mental health clinics in our schools. We also have partnerships with over 130 community-based organizations serving nearly 600 schools with mental health programming. Additionally, New York City will be launching a virtual mental health program that we call telehealth for New York City teens by the end of 2023. It will be free and available to all New Yorkers ages 13 to 17 years old. We're very excited about that. And lastly, we know that COVID remains top of mind for many families, so we encourage families to stay up to date on COVID-19 vaccines. We're also closely monitoring upticks and ensuring that schools are prepared for an increase in respiratory illnesses in the community. We have ensured that all ventilation systems are in good working order, and our custodial engineers are prepared to troubleshoot any ventilation concerns. So this is physical safety, social emotional safety, all wrapped up into one. We'll take questions at this time on any of those topics.
Questions? Awesome. No questions. Yes, Kim.
And this is going to the mental health safety. Chronic absenteeism, we've seen that on the rise over the past couple of years during the pandemic. I've been touching base recently with a good number of kids
Malika?
who are dealing with school refusal and just this kind of unwillingness to get into the pattern of attending school on a daily basis again. Can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing towards the end of last school year and how that's looking for next school year?
Malika, you want to take the first shot at responding?
So we did absolutely see a decrease in chronic absenteeism for the last school year, so about a 4% decrease in chronic absenteeism. And so our plan is to really drill down on the things that we did well. And there were a lot of things that we did well last year. And one of the biggest things that we're going to do this year is really concentrate on the data and making sure that we are really looking at the barriers in our subgroups and the barriers that are keeping our kids out of schools and making sure that we have a really strong alignment with not only the schools but with the districts and Central and the supports that we're putting into place around those barriers and just really making sure that we're putting in a concentrated effort around those barriers and getting our kids back into schools.
We've got point persons at each one of our schools now. We've really made this important, folks, to know we've got to get our kids back to school. We've got at the district level, we've got coordinators at our district level who are out there. And if it means getting out and actually knocking on doors to get these kids back in school, we have to do that. And we're prepared to do that. And so centrally, we're just going to provide our districts with the supports that they need. We have made real progress in chronic absenteeism numbers. Dr. Rux, you want to just speak to a little bit of what we're doing and what some of the numbers have looked like and the improvements that we've made?
Many of you may have heard that we've expanded superintendent teams, and one of the adjustments that we made in response to attendance is that we have attendance teachers now responding and reporting to superintendents directly. So that gives superintendents the ability to review data across the entire district and to see where the needs are and to deploy the support in those specific schools. So that was a very intentional shift that we made to ensure that there was greater impact in the schools that needed the support the most.
You know, one of the things also, let me just say, that we also did was the creation of these virtual schools, which had this population specifically in mind. Some kids who just for a wide range of reasons really struggle with the day-to-day routine of being in a school building. Dan, why don't you just talk a little bit about what we're doing with the virtual schools?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chancellor. And the Chancellor talks about one of his pillars being reimagining the student experience. Chronic absenteeism is not just a problem in New York City. This is a national problem in every large urban district and many of the small ones. Things have changed since the pandemic. Students and families are asking for different sorts of services from us. So we're not going to succeed just by offering the same things that we always have and assume that that's going to work for students and families. So one of the exciting things that the Chancellor has laid out in his vision is a world where we are able to offer high school students and eventually middle school students on-demand, high-quality online coursework. In addition to that, we are opening tomorrow a fully virtual school that is drawing a wide and diverse array of students for whom in-person schooling doesn't work. This is going to help to reduce chronic absenteeism. This is going to help to increase enrollment. This is most importantly going to help to serve our kids better. Kids who are working full-time during the day and can't go to a traditional in-person school, but will very much be interested in taking courses online in the evenings and Saturdays or Sundays, which we are soon going to be able to offer. This is going to speak to students who may have a disability that makes it difficult for them to succeed in a traditional in-person environment, at least full-time. They're going to be able to have a hybrid schedule that they can design around that. So this is one of the things that we think is most exciting, that you will see expanding in scope and in diversity in servicing our student population in the coming years.
Yeah, that's good. Jessica?
Do you have a sense at this point, this is a different subtopic with safety, of how many ACs are not working or partially not working, air conditioning at schools right now? I've heard some scattered reports here and there.
Yeah. Emma, Kevin, and who wants, we have the specific numbers on those at all? Should we have Kevin? Let me know. Kevin Moran, operations guru out in the field. Kevin, you just give us a quick update on our readiness with respect to that.
Thank you very much. We have currently over 365 buildings that have full HVAC systems, so the heating, ventilation, and cooling systems are full, complete, and within every space within that building, including public assembly spaces. We have 265 partially equipped buildings with HVAC. We have the remaining classrooms, roughly 59,000 classrooms, all have functioning one air conditioning or two air conditioning units as a result of the AC for All initiative. At any given time on scale, we could have a breakdown across the 1,400 physical plants. Where that happens, we have a direct replacement program where the school notifies us and we actually essentially take care of it. But there are many, many units out there. At any given time, we like to make sure they're being used efficiently, not necessarily running overnight, not necessarily running in the winter. So we have to take good care of the units that we do have. But if there is a specific concern, our teams are ready to go with custodian, principal, and deputy director of facilities to get a replacement. We, excuse me, additionally expanded our contract reach. We have additional contractors, so we do it quickly. So if we identify any problems tomorrow, we can make sure we set up for a direct replacement. Schools are equipped with anemometers, custodians, and temperature guns to regulate. That is a silver lining of COVID, where we're looking at ventilation every day and all of our HVAC systems, including window units.
Listen, it's going to be hot for a couple of days before the projections are that it's going to start to come down a little bit. We will make it through, okay? Our kids will be just fine.
We'll go to Alex.
So two quick things. One, just wanted to confirm what the actual chronic absenteeism number was last year. It was
Yeah,
4%,
we'll ask for the
that
numbers.
means like
Who's getting it
37%?
first?
Like what is the number?
Yeah, we'll get it for you. We should hopefully have it for you before we leave here today.
Okay.
Because the number, we saw a decrease in the number. Who's working with it?
40.2 last year.
Right.
This year's 36.2.
Right, so we did see, we were moving it in the right direction. Give the number again.
Last year was 40.2%, and this year it's 36.2%.
And the question I wanted to ask is about school safety agents. Pre-pandemic, my understanding is that the number of school safety agents was somewhere in the 5,000 range. Then over the course of the pandemic, I think at one point even dipped into the high 3,000s. I think we got an update somewhat recently that it was up to low 4,000 target number? Like, are you trying to snap back up to where we were pre-pandemic, or do you have a different kind of target in mind?
Yeah, Mark, where's Mark? Yeah, Mark, why don't you speak to, first of all, just give the numbers where we are.
Yeah, currently, as you shared, pre-pandemic numbers, they were at 5063. Currently, there are approximately 4,100 school safety agents. Since this administration, January 22, there have been 722 school safety agents hired. There's a class of 250 school safety agents going into the academy in October. The objective is to really get us back to that pre-pandemic number, right? And as we are dealing with different initiatives throughout the city, obviously we're going to want a little more to ensure that we are not only ensuring safety in our schools, but around our schools and on our corridors as well.
So the goal was 5,000 or so.
Yep. Yep.
Yes, Sonia?
With regards to the fully virtual schools, did you say how many students had enrolled? Does the school have a name? Does it have a specialty as far as curriculum?
Yeah, Sarah, why don't you, Sarah, come on up. Sarah is leading this work, Sarah Kaufman. Can you give them the names and just tell us some of the uniqueness of what's happening with the schools? They're really, really important work.
Thank you. So yes, we have two schools that are opening tomorrow. One is the Virtual Innovators Academy, which will be enrolling about 150 students. That school offers a fully virtual program for all of the students participating in classes completely virtually. We are also opening a school at Del Walls tomorrow, which also will be serving about 150 students. Those students participate in classes both virtually and in person at the school. They will both be serving 9th and 10th grade next year, and will both be growing to serve 9th and 12th grade.
I'll just say, on this and any other topic that you might want to do a more in-depth piece on, please follow up with me and my team, and we'll make sure to do that.
So we'll go to the final part, and then hopefully have a few minutes at the end. You know, we really want to make sure people get their questions answered. The final component we want to speak to everybody is NYC Reads. And everywhere I go, you're going to hear me speak about NYC Reads. This work is critically important for us. Looking back, many of you were present at the launch of NYC Reads this past spring. The truth is blunt. 51% of our students are not reading on grade level. 64% of black students and 63% of Latino students are not reading on grade level in our schools in New York City. Whether it's insufficient guidance on high quality materials or inadequate training for our teachers, our system has fallen short for years. And it's not just a New York City problem. Nationwide, students in all types of districts are reading at alarmingly low levels, demanding our immediate action. In fact, just last week, Columbia University and the Teachers College officially dissolved the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project, which is the main balanced literacy curriculum that has for too long failed our students and has played a major role right here in our New York City public schools. The research is clear. The science of reading is the most effective way to teach reading, starting with mastering letters and sounds and progressively advancing to full fluency and comprehension. As Chancellor, I pledge to get our kids back on the right track by fundamentally teaching them how to read. There's nothing that's more important to me. It's high time that teacher preparation programs nationwide wake up, take notice, and collaborate with K-12 leaders to rectify this long-standing damage that's been inflicted by outdated methods. Every student, from birth to graduation, must be a proficient reader. That's our commitment. And New York City Reads starts from the earliest point of contact in our education system, our early childhood programs. We're focusing on evidence-based reading instruction materials and pedagogies known to cultivate confident readers. We're also ensuring our teachers have the resources and training that they need. And this work has already begun in our Phase 1 schools and districts. From offering professional learning pathways to facilitating leadership summits, we're equipping educators with the tools to impart reading skills effectively. By doing so, we're not just empowering our students for brighter futures, but also equipping parents to better support their children's learning journey. Our commitment to NYC Reads exemplifies our broader pledge. providing our students with the vibrant beginnings they deserve to ensure they stride confidently into the future. We're building on our successes, expanding on impactful initiatives that serve our students from their first steps in school until they graduate and well beyond. So in closing, as we enter this new school year, I encourage our parents to be literacy champions. Create a reading routine with your children. Ask them what they're reading in school. Take them to the library. Connect with their teachers. You are critical partners in our vision, and we can't be fully successful without you. With that, we'll take any questions on NYC Reads.
NYC Reads, yes, Troy.
Could you talk about the timeline for phase 2 schools in particular? I know that some of the districts already know and have a sense of what curriculums they're moving to, but when is the hard deadline for superintendents to make a final decision? And then also, can you just talk about the training and timeline for phase 2 schools?
Dr. Rux, you want to speak to all of those?
Thank you for that question. Our phase 2 schools started much of the community engagement back in the spring. At that point, that was the point when all of our phase 1 schools had made their selections. The phase 2 schools and districts needed a little bit more time to properly engage the community and to also expose their teachers and the principals within the districts to the 3 different curricular options. And so this spring, many of the phase 2 schools and districts are engaging in selection of a unit that they may want to engage in to see if that curriculum will work for them. By December, they will make a selection, and we will continue on with some professional development that's happening at the district level and through our PD partners and vendors. And by next year, 2024, 25, there's an expectation of full implementation of the curriculum.
It's important to know that all of our early childhood programs, Dr. May, could just speak to the fact that what it has looked like this summer, the training has been absolutely incredible. The readiness, the excitement, and there's one specific curriculum that we're using for all of our early childhood programs. Just speak to it a little bit.
Yes, that's correct. Good afternoon. We just came off of a fantastic summer full of professional learning for our leaders, our school and program leaders, all around developmental screeners, assessment, and curriculum as we move towards a singular use of all 3 of those tools to really support our work with children birth through 5 years old across the 5 boroughs. And so it was a wonderful, extraordinary summer full of collaboration and learning together to really feel prepared to support all of our teachers, all of our educators, and all of our families as we embark on this new school year.
Yeah.
This may sound like a simple question, though I know the answer is really complex. How do parents find out right now if their child is above or below grade level on reading and math?
You want to speak to it?
Sure. Hi. So right now what would happen is the child would go into school and there will be a period during which, so it wouldn't actually happen tomorrow, right? But there would be a period during which they're going to administer the universal screener. So the first set of screeners for both math and ELA, and in the younger years, those screeners very specifically focus on those pillars of the science of reading, and we can identify what students are struggling with or not. Students then have intervention, and we've made sure that every single school it has an interventionist, so K through 5 has an interventionist in place, and those can be either previously they were referred to as IEP teachers, but they are the centrally funded special education intervention teacher, or we've added, actually we have 15 interventionists that we developed last year. We've added 100 more this year so that all of our phase 1 schools have interventionists. And we're making sure that those interventions are being delivered at the right dosage so that students have those kinds of supports. If the child is not making progress, then we've identified them as potentially at risk. We can administer not only the second, so the screeners actually are administered 3 times per year. Not only will we administer the screener, but if they need to, we can administer a secondary screener. And in those younger years, again, we'll really identify those pieces where the student needs additional support or if they would need to be referred in that case.
I'm wondering how long you expect it to take for sort of curriculum changes to have an impact on students' learning. And I'm also curious like how you're measuring that. just given that like every year the state tells us the state test scores aren't comparable year to year, like there's so many things that can affect those kinds of scores anyway. Are you working with like academics or anyone to try to like really tease out the impact of the curriculum change?
Yeah. Dan, why don't you respond by giving some context as related to the Mississippi Miracle, or what was happening in Tennessee. You know, we met with the superintendents of a couple of states, Mississippi, which essentially went from almost last to first in Mississippi by simply doing what we are doing here now, shifting to the science of reading. For many years, Mississippi was considered last in the nation. No matter how bad other states may have done in reading, they always could find comfort by saying, at least we're not as bad as Mississippi. Mississippi has leapfrogged past everybody. It's amazing what has happened. And the New York Times did a full feature on the Mississippi Miracle. But very similar results that we saw in Tennessee as well. Let's just talk about some of the things we learned in terms of what they did and the amount of time that it kind of took to see those results.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. Yeah, Mississippi is now about the first or second fastest growing state in terms of ELA proficiency. And listen, assessment, Carolyn can speak to this, is always going to be somewhat complex. There are going to be limitations to state test scores. But in these states, in Tennessee and Mississippi, they triangulated. They didn't just use one data source. They were using, as we do, screeners to diagnose. They were certainly looking at state test scores. They were looking at other assessments that are in use. They were looking, as we will, at the embedded assessments in the curriculum. One of the advantages of having common curricula is you're going to have a common assessment regime across the district. And so we're going to be able to compare how kids are doing across the schools in the district. But when you look at, to the Chancellor's point, the states, and we are the size of many states, we're actually larger than more than a dozen states, the common thing, they approach this differently. Louisiana is another example of that. Texas is doing some work. The common thing is they mobilized in a comprehensive way. They were very focused over multiple years. They looked at curriculum, they looked at instruction, they looked at professional development, they looked at educator preparation, and they were clear at the leadership level that this was, as the Chancellor says here, this is the most important thing. If you're doing that, then sure, you're going to have some complications about what assessments you're looking at. States are going to change the tests they did here. Makes it hard to look year over year. But you are going to find the data that's going to tell you whether the kids are, in fact, learning how to read. And you're going to be able to communicate that, very importantly, to parents.
I fundamentally believe across our middle schools, our high schools, our schools, our teachers have been criticized, and our system has been criticized for so long for not providing a level of academic performance for our kids. And I do not believe that it has been the fault of our teachers. I think we gave them the wrong blueprint on how to teach kids to read. You think about this. I was a high school principal. You know how many of my kids would show up at the 9th grade reading on the 5th grade level? And then I'm held to account to make sure that I'm graduating them ready to go to college and beyond. It is fundamentally unfair. And when you disaggregate the data, you realize that the die was cast on so many of our kids very early on because they were never fully equipped with the fundamentals of how to, simply how to read. And then you connect that to their writing. We have done our kids a disservice, and it doesn't have to be that way. So most of our conversation in the educational space has almost been around various programs, and if the ELA scores went up by 2 points or the math scores went up by a point or two, it completely misses the point. We have not taught the kids the basic fundamental structures of how to read. I salute Emily for what she did with that podcast Sold the Story. We're going to be hosting LeVar Burton in the film that they put out, the documentary, The Right to Read. We have gotten this wrong in New York and all across the nation. And many of us follow the same prescript of balanced literacy. And like the dance of the lemmings, we all march right off the side of the mountain. And generations of kids have been hurt by that. I intend during this administration to get this right and to get the kids back on track. And we're absolutely going to have bumps along the way, We're going to have issues around just implementation. It is the largest school system in the nation by far. So it doesn't happen easily. But it will not happen at all unless you put a stake in the ground and say, we're moving in this direction, and we believe we're moving in the right direction. Mike?
I don't have too much to add to what Dan said. We went through most of the data points, but we are going to be learning over this process, and we're going to be incorporating opportunities to look at other types of data, like student work. But I did want to point out that, to Dan's point, the triangulation of data is going to be incredibly important. If we're waiting only for those state exams and proficiency rates, that's way too late to pay attention to how we're doing. And so we're looking at things like, you heard Kara mention that part of early childhood is the screener, the assessments, the interventions. We, in the past school year, in just 3 months, out of 507 students, 400, and I think it was like 451 of them, had no knowledge of the short vowel sound app. That's a big deal. That's not even level 1. No knowledge of the short vowel sound app, right? A for app. By the end of the 3 months of intervention, they had actually not only acquired level 1, but they were actually, they had mastered basic level of phonics. We had kids who made even more progress than that, who moved from level 1 to level 2, so 78 students, and 68 students who made the jump from level 1 to level 3. And so when we put together curriculum, teacher training, intervention, and a shift in mindset where we're really building this culture around reading, we're going to see big changes.
Just on the math, the high school math curriculum mandate, I understand the importance of 9th grade algebra as a place to target, but can you talk about why this specific curriculum?
Yep.
And then, do you anticipate any ELA curriculum mandates coming for high school?
Great questions, because high school often feels like they're left out, right? So right now we do have supports in place for high school. So I do want to point that out, that even though we're in phase 1 for early childhood through grades K through 5, that doesn't mean that we're not also supporting 6th through 8 and 9 through 12. So they're receiving supports in terms of different literacy strategies and interventions as well. For algebra, we selected that curriculum for a number of reasons, in part because it allows us to do a different kind of math that is about developing deeper understanding. It comes with a really, it makes sense in terms of the kind of teaching and learning that we want to produce. The curriculum, its guidance, you'll get to see more and more of how teachers are helping kids to understand what math really means and is beyond just solving the problem. And so it allows us to do more problem-based learning. It allows us to do a deeper understanding of how math functions, which is what the standards originally wanted us to do, even thinking back to Common Core and into now the Next Gen standard. So that's part of why. The other reason is the particular math curriculum that we've selected is also good for our English language learners. And so we want to make sure that we're not thinking about our populations of learners who need supports as secondary, right? Not after we choose something, then we think about how we support them. We're starting with our students with disabilities and our English language learners. What's going to benefit them is going to benefit all. Same thing when we started thinking about what's going to help our students who are struggling with reading is going to benefit all. And so we're moving in that direction. We'll continue to build out. High school math, isn't just this sort of linear progression. It actually moves into different courses. And so this particular curriculum also has a pathway to those courses. So for folks who want to commit, you can actually continue to move in that way, which is really, really great for us. We are looking at other curricular options for 6th through 8 and 9 through 12. We want to make sure we're doing the right kind of engagement, so working with the Division of School Leadership. And right now we're reviewing a number of options, and the criteria we want to make sure is there, because when you think about secondary literacy, it's very different from what we're doing in elementary school.
Just to quickly build on Carolyn's good points here. Reading is the focus, the Chancellor said. We have to get this right, starting tomorrow. We have to get this right. But to be clear, the issues that bedevil us in math and in science and in social studies and in other academic subjects are very similar, meaning we are privileged to have kids for 990 instructional hours per year. How kids do, how they do academically, how they do in terms of their social and emotional development is dependent upon what they are doing in those 990 hours. And it's not just in reading where we are having them do work, as the Chancellor says, that isn't going to help them to succeed. So we have to get this right where we are now, early childhood, K to 5, high school algebra. But our intent is certainly to look very, very closely at what it is we're asking kids to do, what content we are putting in front of them, the quality of instruction, and all of our core academic grades and subjects.
Our theme is bright starts and bold futures. You don't get to the bold futures if you don't have the solid foundations in place. But ultimately, we want all of our kids to be, just excited about their learning experiences each and every day, with a clear vision toward where they might ultimately go after this experience is over for them. Jay Grieve, if you would just chat for a minute about what the bold futures looks like and how we've engaged the business community to create real opportunities for our kids. This is no longer about kids just going to school just to go to school. We want them to be purposeful about what the possibilities could be for their lives. Jay?
Thank you, Chancellor. Yes, we have some incredible things happening at high schools right across the city this year. We have launched a program called Future Ready NYC. This is very much speaking to the heart of what the Chancellor has described in terms of wanting to make sure every student leads us on a pathway to a rewarding career and long-term economic security. And what that program is doing is allowing students to learn in and through the prism of career. They're getting the chance to get exposure, awareness, hands-on work experiences in high-wage, high-demand jobs right across the city. And many of these jobs students may not know about without these opportunities. So it's really critical that we give them that early access so they can think about, is this for me? And of course, to help answer that perennial question of like, is this relevant to what I'm going to do in the future and why am I learning this, and providing that really important context and relevance. And so in addition to that, that career exposure and the work experience, students are also getting a chance to get early college credit, so they're leaving with a head start on their college pathway if that's where they're heading. They can also earn job-ready credentials, so if they're heading into the workforce, they have the chance for a really strong first job. And we're doing all of that in partnership with major businesses across the city to really open up those opportunities for our students. So many of you may know we announced a partnership with Google earlier this year in June. We also announced a partnership with Northwell Health, the largest health employer in the state. And this is creating new opportunities for students through all of their high school grades to be learning in areas like data science, cybersecurity, software development, the kinds of areas where we know there's just tremendous demand and opportunity, but we know that the workforce doesn't always look like the diversity of the city. So technology is a big area, healthcare is also a big area, business and finance, and of course education. So we're really excited about that. We also have incredible opportunities for students through our career readiness and modern youth apprenticeship program. And these are really driving just a redefined and engaging experience for students through their high school grades.
Take maybe just a couple more questions.
Yeah, and we'll open it up to anything you need. I'll also just say we had the announcement yesterday on the Subway Surfing Kills campaign, which was developed by students at one of our career tech high schools, Art and Design High School. A perfect example of students getting real-world experience. They get to put that on their resume, that those ads are in the subways today, and they're helping the rest of the city as well. So off-topic questions, we'll take about 3. Kayla? Or open questions.
Sure. So I have 2 unrelated questions, one that I promised is really short. Other than the Spanish language needs for the new asylum seekers coming in, what other languages are you seeing just rattle off languages?
You speak some of the other languages that have been spoken?
So there are a range of languages that we're seeing, and again, in an ENL classroom, that language is not, we teach in English, and so kids can be in a classroom with a range of different languages. Quechua is a language that we're seeing different dialects from Senegal. We're seeing beyond Spanish, a range of different languages, although many, if not most of our new asylum seekers who are multilingual learners are Spanish speakers.
And the other one was about, I wanted to check in on pre-K. Can you give us an update on the pre-K seats moving into areas of higher demand? How many seats have been moved so far? And now that kids are going to be showing up these programs more and more, what percentage of seats are vacant still?
So there continues to be 3K seats in every single district, and there continues to be 3K seats that are available, over 10,000 as we ended last school year, available for all of our families across the 5 boroughs. We have worked really hard in just this last year, in just a short amount of time, to add an additional 3,000 3K seats, to adjust nearly 7,000 seats to make sure that we got them to the places where families needed them in the moment. And that work will continue, and that work will continue to support families and to have immediate access.
Jessica?
I wanted to thank you guys for doing this because it's very helpful. Just to get a response to some concerns I've heard, both from central office staffers on enrollment issues with the new migrants and the new arrivals, and also from principals themselves. I'm hearing about a staffing shortage for those who are trying to enroll people centrally, and then I'm also hearing from principals, like at the fashion industries and those sorts of places where they're coming in, that there's just not enough people to process all of the paperwork and get it back in time. And I'm also hearing from principals that they don't know how many of these new students are going to be showing up tomorrow. And so they feel like they're going to be caught off guard. Can you respond to those two things?
Of course, and thank you for the question. So when we set up last year, the influx started happening really at the tail end of July and August. And a lot of our shelter-based coordinators are 10-month employees, and they really support our enrollment office in the shelters with setting up matching families with schools and getting them enrolled. So there were not as many families last year. This year, when we started seeing the uptick in July again, our shelter-based coordinators who really provide a lot of support to the family welcome centers, they were on vacation. And so we have made a plan to make those folks 12 months. Thanks so much to our students in temporary housing team. So next year they will be 12 months, but this year they were 10 months. And so the family welcome centers and the entire enrollment team, they were short from those extra hands that were always on deck during the year to help them enroll families. That said, we know that there was about a week-long process to get all of those students enrolled. There were about 3,000 students in temporary housing who needed to be enrolled. Last week we reported that we enrolled 900 students since July. That number has jumped up to over 2,500 as of today. So what does that tell us? It tells us that our enrollment folks and our shelter-based folks are working really, really hard to get those kids enrolled quickly. We learned a lot about our enrollment processes over the past year, and so we know that putting in supports to make sure that people are paid extra hours, making sure that those coordinators who are integral to the enrollment process are 12 months are all things that we are adjusting.
And the principals who don't know exactly how many people to expect tomorrow?
So they actually do know, but I'm going to pass that over to Deputy Chancellor Rux, who oversees our school leadership division.
One of the pivots that we made very quickly was having the enrollment office notify principals of the students who are coming so that they can plan accordingly by grade. If they're seeing a number of students, 15 or more on a particular grade, they can create a vacancy so that they can staff that so that when children come, they have a teacher and the school community at large is prepared and ready for them. So we did make a pivot, and they are being notified of the number of students by grade that are coming to them.
Then Alex, our last question.
Yes, Chancellor, we're coming up on your second full school year as Chancellor. And I'm just wondering if you could offer like a little bit of a self-evaluation, like how you think you've done so far.
Oh, I think I've done? I've given my best effort at trying to lead the largest school system in the nation. There is no real preparation for a job this big. I saw as my number one thing, Deputy Chancellor Lloyd, we would say, was rebuilding trust with our parents and our families. And I think we've done a pretty good job in doing that. And you do that not by the speeches that you give, you do that by the work that you do and how you engage folks. So we work really hard to engage our parents and our families, to get them to continue to believe in our schools. Where's Mark Traeger? Right here. Mark Traeger, I think, would say, you know, Mark was the chair of the Education Committee when he was in the City Council, and has said there's never been a chancellor who's been as open with the elected officials. I meet with the elected officials on a regular basis, and I thank Mark for his leadership in helping to make sure that happens. The goal is to say, I don't have all the answers, but to collectively we can figure out our way forward in creating a path to where we need to be for our kids. So I think I'm most proud of this team that we've put together. It's part of the reason why I wanted to do this. I could do a press conference just by myself and answer many of these questions. But it is important that you know that I'm not a solo act and that I'm simply a leader of a team that has to drive change in our school system. And I think we got some of the best people that anyone could find anywhere, here with me, there, and others who are not with us in this room at this moment. Some of the smartest, most hardworking, committed people. But the system has not gotten the results that it needs. And I think that is why we have to continue to work in a more strategic way. So I'll leave it up to others to determine where we are. I'm not big on middle of the game reviews, if you will. It's kind of like asking me how am I doing in the third inning of a 9-inning game. You know, I might be down 3-1 and still ultimately win the game. So I don't know that it matters that much where we are at this moment. But I will tell you that every single day I'm very appreciative of the people that I have to work with. I'm very committed to the kids in this system. And I know in my own heart, I'm here for the right reasons. I'm not here for any self-aggrandizement. I'm here because I really want to see a change in the system. We are seeing that change. We have a long way to go, but we are absolutely on the right track.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
It's good to
Thank
take a
you.
vacation.
Thank you for coming.